Yo, what's up, guys? Let's talk about the balance patch, and did we overhype them? And then we, as in content creators, but also just the community itself, did we overhype this balance patch? Because this balance patch was longer than it normally was. Well, that's a few things that I've heard from other content creators, other streamers out there saying at some points, like, I wanted to test units, but I kind of ran out of things to test pretty fast. So did we overhype this balance patch? And I think to a certain extent, maybe, but also hear me out on why that is. Because normally a balance patch always created some kind of zero to hero unit. We always had some kind of Joe Gunn got into the meta. We had like an Oliver get into the meta. We had like, I don't know what kind of units, Megumis, this, that, Ayas, some kind of LD. Jaeger became crazy good. Lima became crazy good in the last balance patch. There was always some kind of zero to hero unit in every balance patch. And in this balance patch, there's no clear balance patch winner. There's also a lot of more nerfs rather than buffs, because normally for the nerfs that we had in the balance patch, it was like one or two things, like Oliver's slight nerf and this is slight nerf. But in this case, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight up nerfs of units that are less usable than they were before. And sure, there are some buffs that you would say is like, hey, this becomes useful and this becomes playable. And that's also what I want to go through is a bunch of units, like how good were they after the buff? For example, Theodora is one of those that was definitely hyped up as like, oh, new speed lead, new this CC unit. Well, it's actually doing pretty horrible, as you can see over here. Yeah, those are not really stats to write home about. It's like, yo, we in the balance patch kind of style. So that is one of those things, and a lot of the buffs that are out there are very tiny buffs, especially for those awakening changes, or, well, even more, yeah, the awakening changes. A lot of them are very niche, very nice, and making a unit better, but it's not necessarily, it's like, oh, I'm gonna do a highlight video on Theor because he got accuracy right now. It's like, he's still exactly the same unit. He's gonna be used for the same purposes. He's just gonna be better at his job. Same for the Steel Commander, Ezio Light. That thing is a lot better right now. I can easily do like 4 to 5k extra damage on him. But is that worth a whole video of a highlight like, oh, now I'm gonna be first picking it? No, it's still a siege unit kind of style, right? And that's with a lot of these. And also the ones that they gave a speed awakening to were the ones that can actually kind of use it, but probably still not that strong. So let's actually check the Draken Warrior on Solvark. Yeah, it's not that people really started picking him up or anything because of the speed leads. How about the Beetle Guardian, the one over here? People kind of gave him a try, but also not to the best of success. So just getting a speed awakening doesn't necessarily make you a crazy good unit. I'm pretty curious about the pure vanilla cookie, which did get a double up on the buff, which also give more attack bar decrease on this one, or more attack bar absorb, but it's not updated on this side just yet for the balancing. But yeah, that's where we can see some better win rates. That's definitely better than it was prior to the balance patch, so that's good to see. So this is definitely one of those. Isn't necessarily a 0 to hero if it goes to a 50% win rate. It's a 0 to a good usable state, so that's one of those things. Also, definitely what we could see with the balance patch on the nerfs is that this Wind Stark used to be like 54. It's still super high on the pick rate, which I'm surprised about. Maybe people still kind of have to adjust, like, yo, should I be actually using this? But yeah, that is a pretty big difference right there for drop-off right there. I'm also curious about the Megumi. Megumi was also nerfed. Megumi actually went down in win rate. I expected Megumi to go up in win rate because people start using it less, but maybe people are kind of used to it right now where it's just not doing as good, I guess. So yeah, it's definitely changing the meta a bit to also give more room for other units to be entering into the meta. Lima got a slap on the wrist, and it's noticeable. It's like barely of a nerf in the first place. Funny enough, Gianna's kind of getting back into the meta again. Sierra's trying hard to actually lose points in the meta. Interesting. Let's see, we can also see the balance patch difference in here. Do we have like a... No, it's not necessarily that we have a difference for... just a whole list of like everything that's more different or anything, like whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's still one of those things that Stark isn't doing as great solo. But if we compare a Stark, or we put a Stark next to a Valeska, it's still 55 win rate. Like, it's not 60 win rate that we had early on last season, but it's still a really good win rate if you pair that with the right unit. And I think that's a good thing for the balancing in general. But then back to the question. Did we overhype the balance patch? Well, I don't think we necessarily overhyped it. It's just nothing really became a zero to hero. Nothing became crazy good. It's not that you start spamming Volantis because Volantis got a buff. No, but it made him more usable. Like, in his own niche, he is more usable. And I think a lot of those buffs kind of made it like that, where Cigar, is he necessarily like zero to hero? Not really, but did he become usable because of the balance patch? Yeah, you can actually start drafting him again. So I think what this balance patch did is not necessarily making one OP thing. It is making everything a bit more usable. Similar to like the ferns. Oh, the ferns are always a little bit hard to look at over here. I know one way that's easy to look at a fern. If you go to win rate and you select it by this, then you have the light fern over here. You can select the other ferns as well. Just curious about the stats of the other ones. But this one is crazy freaking stat still. I'm surprised that this one was not nerfed in the latest balance patch because... well, maybe because it's LD5 and they don't want to chop it down, but funny enough, Darkstark and Lightfern are both the highest win rate units in-game. I heard a lot of people complain about Darkstark when they pull. It's like, oh, this unit not that great. Well, apparently it's doing pretty good. People always called me weird for putting Ragdoll in the SP up. Hey, we need a little bit of an AoE meta, and Ragdoll's instantly like top tier LD once again. So I think people will be picking up more Ragdolls again. Might you also think like, oh, I should be drafting Angela. I have Angela. What can I do with an Angela? Well, let me show you that for you. We do this, and then highest win rate with, you need that Ragdoll. So a lot of those Bruiser units are Ragdoll bound to have good win rate. So pretty much all three of those, well, at least these two, if you want to play those, well, it is a Ragdoll bound kind of unit. Same for Jaeger and kind of stuff. But yeah, that's just one of those things. Aragorn also still pretty high up. Probably is paired with a bunch of other LDs as well. No, actually not that crazy on win rate on Lima, but crazy on win rate with Gojo and Gianna. If it's not one LD, it's one of the other LDs. But let's see, Windfern. Windfern is actually not doing too bad. It is definitely noticeable where she has a little bit more damage output right now. Also, what people maybe not have picked up just yet is that she's actually good against like Dark Demons and those kind of things, because she most likely will have a passive up and available, ready to go for the moment that he comes back, those kind of things. So against nukers, it's definitely not that bad. So let's actually select it on the against. What is it best against? Yep, nukers, exactly as I mentioned. So if you're having trouble with single target nukers, keep that in mind, single target nukers, Sonias, Daphnes, Federicas, Kiaras, then this might be a unit you want to pick up. And I think that is what the balance patch kind of made all together. It's not necessarily one unit's like, oh, now Oliver is like going to be the most picked unit, or Stark is going to be the most picked unit, or this or that. No, it's like a whole list of, you could be starting to use a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. And for example, here, the Fern is definitely a unit I would add to the table. Am I going to go back to a Bison? I might actually. And would I run it necessarily on Violent or Swift? Well, the thing is, if I'm not going to be using a Bison as much, in this case, the Carnal, wait, not the Carnal, the other Carnal, the real Carnal, this thing, yeah, that's actually exactly what you see over here as well. Like, if he's worth it to give a good bio set, I'm not 100% sure yet. But if I have two AoE strips, and then he just goes for a good Swift set, which I could maybe even make resistance or something along those lines, then he could be, it's like, yeah, just a 190 or 95 set on Swift is easy to miss. So one of those things that you could actually run up. Sure, it maybe overcomplicates your draft a little bit, but it also gives you some options like, hey, maybe I'm struggling with Shizukas or other things that I would have to strip and reset. Well, guess what? There's a unit, strip and reset, right in one unit. Same for like these units over here. I've already, like, I run up for some accounts sometimes, like Space Service, whatever, not really trying to promote it or anything. But there was this one account which had a lot of AoE CC kind of style. And I was like, yo, a Fire Druid right now with a high chance of provoke actually has a pretty loaded kit. Like, I don't expect it to be used a lot, but on that particular account, it was actually a team where it was always two AoE strips. It had a Moor, it had a Laura, it had a Balinus, and then after that, you just had like good chance of this thing actually doing good stuff. Was he there for a Vio set? No, it was just a Swift set that is like a 4 and 5 pick, which could actually become very good. And we actually see exactly that number over here. So what this balance patch did was more creating a little bit of everything that is decent to usable rather than creating the zero to hero, as called. What do we have? The Mei Wang. How is your win rate? Went up a little bit, also a little bit more pick rate. Makes sense, makes sense. But yeah, nothing too crazy. Is he ruined these days on HP, crit damage, HP? No, still the higher one on speed, crit damage, HP. That does make sense, though. Vionem is the best build. I'm not surprised about that whatsoever. Also over here it's actually the other way around. But yeah, that's just the main thing. And also some units are more siege upgrades rather than anything else. I'm wondering, Eladriel, is that actually a unit that people pick up right now? Because against full cleaves, I do notice myself sometimes that it's kind of annoying to deal with all of those corrects and those kind of things. And against that, this thing has a nasty-ass revive. Like, this is the reason why you have no reason to pick a Nigong ever again. Because this revive is just like, it revives with 70%. That is absolutely bonkers for how much HP that is for a revive. So I might rune up myself 1-4, just an anti-cleave kind of shenanigans. Artemil, I don't really expect Artemil to actually get that much of a buff, because issue with Artemil is you still kind of want to crit rate on your own attacks, and if it's not your own attacks, then yeah, I guess. Well, it has a little bit higher of win rate, I guess. It's definitely more like just crit damage for every time right now. Does make a bit of sense. Not really a unit that I would say is that crazy. Isis. Did Isis actually get an upgrade? Yeah, a little bit more playability. Not the craziest of best things. Main thing that she needs, in my opinion, is just like an irresistible on the Oblivion, but that's probably never going to happen. Ileana. Ileana is some of those, or Liliana, it is actually some of those that people actually said, oh, she's the zero to hero. Over here, it looks like a lot, but the pick rate is not that much. Over here, we see more reasonable numbers. Doesn't look too bad, though. Speed, crit damage, attack. Speed, crit damage, HP is the kind of style that we're looking at. Okay. How about this one over here, then? Okay, there's probably like one guy, like, hella spamming this thing, and it's working crazy good for that guy or something, I don't know. But it's also like just 137 matches, which is definitely not that much yet. I think she's got a more art or siege unit than anything, which is not bad, but it's not that crazy. Manananan actually misunderstood the Manananan buff, but the Manananan buff is barely a buff, because you up one number and you down one number, you kind of like level it out to it's the same. Yeah, I don't know. Bella actually had the very first iteration, or like the very first iteration of this thing, tracking all of the numbers. It was like 61%. It's just like a bunch of like super high-end people like Obabo and Vinny and a bunch of others like doing very well with it. And now it's kind of leveling down to where the points where it gets like, this was more a nerf than a buff. Because I would say a lot of Bella players were using Bella in siege offense against Lamilas to destroy HP on this skill 4. And that's no longer the case. And also then in turn 1, you could actually use that. Now she becomes the most RNG unit in game, because you have to stack this. And to stack this, what do you have to do? Hit a lot. How do you hit a lot? Violent proc. So violent procs enables you to use your S4 a lot more. So the people that are doing well in Bella are sacky people. It's just the main thing to it. So, yeah, Bella, it's just... I think that skill 4 was just a good siege skill, and now they kind of did it like a weird in the middle again, which is just not that great. Wunsa. How well is Wunsa doing for the balancing? Okay, it's doing a little bit better. I can understand that, mainly because some people did trap a Wunsa by just having like, how often for the Wunsa players out there did it happen to you? There's one will rune on an enemy team, and you don't strip that one will rune, and therefore your whole team doesn't move well. That's no longer going to be the issue. At least you get a 10 bar right now, which is definitely really nice. Also understandable the crit damage in the 4 does do better in general sense because of the skill 4. Or not skill 4, skill 2. Attack does the highest. That's fairly interesting as well. Well, maybe not to trigger Nemesis or something. I don't know. But yeah, it's doing a little bit better post-balance, which is not crazy of a nerf, but it's a little bit more of a consistency thing, which is not that bad. The Justice thing is Theonia. I think that's never actually used, maybe for some weird-ass cleave. But I think for just a normal arena offense hit, it's a lot easier to get this because now you only need an Adriana to stack both of them, the attack and the speed, rather than you needing also a weird-ass defense buff in there where you kind of are forced to get a Laura in or whatnot as a strip, which is just kind of weird, but yeah, that's just one of those things. And then we have a bunch of siege changes. And as I mentioned, a whole bunch of these kind of changes. I don't really expect people to draft in Ian. Did people actually draft this in? Yeah, a few people gave it a try. You could maybe make it on some like double Nem Will, anti-Leo kind of whatever, whatnot. But that's actually what people tried over here. Not that much of success. So maybe it's better next to Yan Hong boosting and that kind of stuff. So yeah, as I mentioned, is this balance patch overhyped? No, I don't think so. I think it's still a really good balance patch that just addressed a lot of things. The only thing which might make look boring after a few days is that nothing crazy hard changed. There's no insane meta change because of a change. And that is the thing what we had in prior balance patch. Like the whole balance patch did absolutely nothing, but there was one line in there which made attack buff gain to Jogun, and suddenly Jogun was meta again. And the whole meta kind of shifted around. Jogun is meta right now. Or we had a balance patch of completely doing nothing, but Irration got the 33 lead and like another buff, and everyone was playing Irration first pick. And that just changed the whole thing. Or before that, we had like the chakras being buffed. We had, first of all, we had, well, chakra. I think about the Indras, but I just called out the unit right away. When chakra was buffed, chakra was right away is like the meta thing. Chakra was that meta that we did not even notice Venton was actually better than chakra. Because everyone was drafting Chakra, and then at some points, like, Chakra was nerfed, and people were like, yo, actually, Venton is really good as well. We got a whole meta of Venton. And that is the thing that this balance patch did not do. It did not make a unit crazy good, which is like, okay, now, that's maybe the thing that people were hoping for Theonia, or Theodora. Theonia is the other one. But Theodora was like, oh, maybe Theodora is the next, like, insane unit. And what this balance patch did is actually tune down a lot of those units that were played a lot, which is interesting. Thing that I personally would have liked to see myself is just a Aya nerf, but that is just a thing that I feel like she's too good, but she's also keeping some units in check. And that is also one of those things, like, if she wasn't in the game, then we would have had really big issues with the Light Fern. We would have had really big issues with a, what's it called? Like, there's a bunch of other units that just are crazy good if she wouldn't be there. Okay, we don't have that many matches in there. But yeah, that's also like, she's keeping a lot of Layla's, this thing. She's keeping a lot of units in check even. Fern, she's not keeping that much in check, but that is the thing with Aya. It's trying to keep a lot of units in check, so therefore, like, nerfing it, I don't know. I think they should just remove it where, or the slightest nerf they can do, which still makes her in the same value, is that all of the debuffs landed on her, land as a one-turn debuff. At least you cannot proc and kill 50% of your whole team for absolutely no fucking reason. That is the most easy buff, but still keeping her viable, because if you start nerfing this 25 to 20, will actually make a pretty big impact. Same if you lower this or like any of those kind of things. But this 25%, or maybe then only lower 5% of your HP for like a 20%, I would take that. I would take that. So a little bit of a buff and a nerf at the same time. But I think in general sense, this balance patch, especially it's a balance patch just before SWC, keep that part in mind. We always tend to say a balance patch just before SWC doesn't change anything. They don't want to go for heavy changes, which they actually hold on to this. They didn't want to go for heavy changes outside of the Stark nerf, which is making Stark less usable, but still he's usable and he's good. Same for the Megumi, he's still usable, he's still good, but he's less spammable. But they didn't make a crazy change of giving another 33 lead to something. Also, the Theodora, I would honestly say that she probably could have kept this 50% bar, because without that, she's kind of mediocre for a CC unit, and she's supposedly a CC unit, I guess. That speed lead is definitely nice, but is she first pick material because of that? Not really. I think the moment that people start picking her as last, then she would be a bit better. Let's actually see. We can see the pick phase. Yep, not surprised about that. Like, if she's a late pick, okay, then this supposedly would have been higher as well, so it's not really like, oh, I'm right, but yeah, okay, maybe not as much. But I feel like if you pick her as a late, like, oh, I need a CC unit and I need a speed lead, there's not too many of those outside of like a Neftis or something, which is an LD5, which not many people have. But CC units on speed leads. Well, Oliver is kind of a CC unit, but not AoE. And also different elements, so it's solving different problems. So I think if she's more of a late pick unit, she could become a little bit better rather than just like people trying to spam her in the first pick, and then she's definitely not really a unit that you should be using as much. But yeah, that is my 2 cents on this balance patch. Let me know in the comments if you did agree. Let me also know in the comments if you did enjoy this balance patch and what was your favorite unit for this balance patch. And as mentioned, it's SWC coming up pretty soon, so they didn't want to make crazy changes. But even though they didn't want to make crazy changes, they had a very lengthy balance patch with just addressing a whole bunch of things like this, which did make a lot of sense. And that is what main people were hyping it for. This balance patch makes a lot of sense. However, they created one thing that did not make that much sense, but maybe they were scared of this unit becoming too good if they made it too much sense, which is you currently have your guaranteed crit on the other skill, but you also do have a crit rate lead for arena, plus you awaken into crit rate itself as well, which is like, you have crit on crit on crit, well, you're already 100 crit, so we can crit while we're critting. That doesn't make too much sense. They did not do it neither for the Itadori on fire, they did not do it for the Zyros, which are all units that have crit awakening and have guaranteed crits on 1 or 2 skills. And for that reason, they were like, yeah, these units are probably already too strong, so therefore we just don't give that, I guess. Because Zyros in the end is still, I would say, LDs excluded, Zyros is the best AoE nuker in game without like any competition at all. Like, he's just crazy good. He's way better than Legolas, Itadori's, you name it. Like, he's just straight up better than that. Sure, some of them have like their niche moments where they're also good, but yeah, boosting a Zyros would be kind of odd to buff a Zyros while the Zyros is already crazy good. So, does make a bit of sense. So, in the end, is this overhyped for balance patch? As I mentioned it a bunch of times, maybe a little bit. But I think it was still a very good balance patch, and I would still rate it at least an 8 out of 10. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10 before. I would still give it an 8 out of 10 balance patch, because it is close to SWC and they don't want to completely switch up the meta, which they did not do in this case. So I think they did do a solid balance patch. In 2 months, which is going to be the balance patch, looking at, then we have 2 months, we're looking at end of October balance patch, which is very close to World Finals, because World Finals is mostly like first week of November-ish. So it might be that this balance patch either doesn't do shit, or they're gonna postpone it until after SWC, which would be somewhere over here or something, which would make a little bit more sense, and then they could overhaul the whole thing once again. I'm also not too sure how close that would be towards a Siege tournament, but I think it's still like a month in advance for a Siege tournament. Do we have like Siege tournament? We have, this one is the new Siege one. Probably have that running until later. So we have that Siege tournament is in November. Oh, that starts right away after that. That is kind of inconvenient as well. So yeah, then the balance patch not gonna do shit. I can tell you that much. So then the balance patch of January would be already the one where it starts making sense again. Wait, is that the thing? September, October? Oh, no, wait. We're already in August right now. We had the balance patch in July, so we should have the balance patch in September. Okay, that still makes sense. Oh, no. I did it wrong. I was counting from August, but it's like legit 2nd of August right now. No, there should be a balance patch in end of October. No, wait, end of September. End of September should be a balance patch, so that's somewhere in between cups in the middle. Don't expect them to change a lot then, but at least it gives them a little bit more freedom. And then we have the October no patch, end of November patch, which is then also after the, well, that is then pretty much after everything, because that's also then after this as well. So that's like the week after this. So then they can actually go crazy again. So I expect the November patch, if they want to do actually something really changing, it's probably November patch. Next one, I think it might be similar to what we have right now. Tune down a bunch of things like the Fern, probably boost like the free runs and that kind of stuff, because they're kind of ass. And then we just go from there, and then maybe a few new changes of like a speed lead and some awakening. That is what I kind of expect in the September patch. And then the November patch could be a big hitter, could be a big disappointment. But that's just me yapping about the patches, guys. Thanks a lot for watching for this one. Let me know in the comments what you think about it, and see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.